So I'm going to be answering, Rachel's question of, can you think of an example from another text which a self is impacted by another self? Um, is it a good or bad thing? So I believe, before I start with my example, I believe that they can very well be a good and or bad thing. I guess it just depends how each person is sought out to impact the other one. Um, More so, or how one person can process it, their prehistory and um, how they combine all these experiences together and genuinely the experiences themselves. So I'm most primarily going to be talking about negative experiences, but I do believe that there are good and bad impacts people can make on each other. You can meet someone that you really look up to and that you value their work ethic, but um, there are other people who will hurt you, emotionally and physically, and you can choose to emulate these people and their qualities, or you can, change for the worse because of, what they've done and what they've shown you. So, an example I think I can relate to a self being impacted by another self are the children in the bluest eye. So, Claudia was very apparently impacted by the presence of the Shirley Temple doll and other white standards. Similarly, Piccola was also victimized and affected by her father, Trolli, who raped her. These systems in which self emerge in relationships, such as racism and sexual abuse, are part of the context to which a self emerges. So, um, you don't get to pick and choose. And as we learned from our article, that it's all these interactions, it's this accumulation of stuff that makes you into yourself and makes your identity. As noted in the article, it's quote, these systems work to produce selves in certain ways and are therefore a part of um, oneself's prehistory. So, likewise, as identified in the matrix of power relation, all the pressures placed on us from others and systems, even before we emerge as selves, Claudia struggled with knowing who she was and her own worth because of the social and ethical norms. Furthermore, as a child, Piccola, she couldn't really decipher what was happening to her or why, what experiences had made her that. And throughout the book, throughout the story, she's actually very habitually victimized and kind of lost in this whole growing up process. And it was hard for her to understand what this had to do with her and how this was going to affect her. And, even at the end of our reading, she said, how do you get someone to love you? So we are faced with these pressures that make us question, who we are now and who we are becoming and who will be later. So I think that that story was a really good example of how people were growing and affected by their growth, especially when, you're impacted by another self in good and bad ways.